Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. It's Shirley with Spirit of Matter. And this is another chart I'm finding myself doing by heart, and this is Ismail Haniyeh's natal chart. So, Ismail Haniyeh is the Palestinian leader, and he recently was politically assassinated within the Israel-Palestine. All flags are false flags right now, so that's the way I look at it. But he was politically assassinated within the war. And let's take a look at this chart, because he has, I don't have ascendant, okay? It's given like Taurus ascendant in midheaven Aquarius, but I don't have like birth time. He is Aquarius Sun with Sun conjunction of Saturn, Sun-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, but in the middle phase, okay? He has Moon in Pisces conjuncting Fumalaut, which is interesting. His Pluto, which I paid attention to, is 11th degree Pluto, Virgo, and Uranus, 4 degrees Virgo. So this is the Pluto-Virgo conjunction. Again, you know my perspective on leaders. They are all, regardless of the country and so on, all from secret societies, inbred, and even though he was born in refugee camp in Jabalia and so on, these people are pre-elected, these people are trained, and they're trained in death camps that include rape, murder, torture, electrocution, programming, and put in a lot of investment for them to have various altars. And this is all across the board. So the Pluto conjunct Uranus, and was born in 1963. That's 63 children. I run into a lot of SRA survivors, or not survivors in this case, from this year in particular. I don't know why, but that's, I guess it's not only this year, but I guess that's interesting. And the Pluto conjunct Uranus is, yes, I talked about this. Now, Pluto on 11th degree. Pluto on 11th degree, it's giving a person who was off a timeline or a neural network, okay, of people who bring people to commit suicide and are programmed to self-destroy in the form of suicide, okay? I'm not talking about like self-harm and stuff like that, just like suicide. It's also degree of electricity and electrocution, so it's kind of a Uranian degree. And this is given very likely a child that was programmed to, in this context, okay? It's not everybody, that was programmed to cause people to want to kill themselves, or cause them to kill themselves, and he's very likely programmed to kill himself too. And indeed, his job was to be head of a legion of people who would also do bombings where they would be killed. Okay, so child assassins, but also youth that they would make such attacks that they are killed. So suicide bombers, kind of like a kamikaze. And this is a particular form of training that is given to child assassins. Yes, other leader with this Pluto placement that they saw is actually surprising is Geert Wilders. But I don't know like how that manifests for him. Or perhaps it was within the camps, the death camps, that he made like that was supposed to do. But we want to pay attention to this, okay? So, because those are people that a part of the designation is to send people to their deaths when they know that they're going to die. So this is the 11th degree and electrocution as well. Another thing I see here is, well, he has Rahu in Cancer, 29th degree Cancer, okay? And 29th degree Cancer, this was the beginning of 1963. He was born in January 16, I think, 1963. And anoretic degree Cancer is, again, a person that has premonitions, that knows what's going to be. And when this is the North Node, okay, not like the ascendant, like Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is eclipse child. And I predict more people to have 29th degree, that, you know, as long as I don't get like permission to talk about it, then or confirmation, then I don't say that. But I believe confirmation of the person, to make that clear. I believe that the 29th degree Rahu is giving fated life, where there is certain sort of far-seeing. He probably knew to predict his life, or he would know to predict his life from eclipse to eclipse. Okay? This is another one. I don't know if he's eclipse child, but I don't think he's eclipse child. No, he's not eclipse child, but this is another one where life would be having an excess fatedness. Okay? You would see premonitions, especially in Cancer. His moon is with Fomalhaut, which is psychic ability, if you tap into it, and that depends on his training in those dead camps, because he sometimes they want you to get the psychic out, but they also want to finesse and they want to control, so you will not have access to your psychic abilities, or there would be intervention in the psychic abilities. Anybody who tries to channel understands that to some degree. People who are somewhat targeted individuals understand that to more degree. I understand it to quite a degree. And that is that even though he has great psychic abilities, it's not impossible that either he didn't tap into him, or they would try to take his ability to use his psychic abilities, which would be only partially successful with his 29 ascendant. Venus in 22 degrees Sag. Venus in 22 degrees Sag is basically the degree of to kill and be killed. Venus in a man's life is the spouse. So I don't know too much about his life. It's giving murdered women and sisters around, or women that are murderers, and so on. And again, growing in those death camps, it's very likely, because the children, there would be both men, women, genderqueers, whatnot, and they would breed them to be child assassins as well. So it can be the case that he grew among even children or sisters that were child assassin, and Jupiter rules children. Okay, so that's kind of a thing to remember. His Jupiter, I think, is in Aries, supposed to be. It's the year of Jupiteris. I don't remember the degree. So this is the Jupiter Aries is ruling that Venus, and his Jupiter is ruled by Mars. His Mars is in 17 degrees Leo. So his Mars, I believe, is conjuncting Israel's Saturn, which is giving together the syringe. So it's not possible that he acted with Israel. I'm talking about global intelligence, okay? All flags are false flags right now. There's no flags, okay? Listen to Ronald Bernard. He doesn't say that, but he talks about offshore banking and the child sacrifice and the global stuff that happened. Take into consideration that the Satanists cut dividends to the church, and the church is together with Lucifer, okay? So the Vatican is together with Lucifer. It's just, okay? That fine detail is important. Otherwise, you could get into all kinds of discourses that would sway you away from tending to expandable children. So yes, it's very obviously Ismail Haniyeh was an expandable child, grown, became leader, and his job was to create a lot of death. It's basically that was he was made to do. He has a very royal Mars, okay, Mars in Leo, can like that, can like the show of death. It's basically kind of a death show. And 17 is also a Leo degree of Leo, okay, according to assassinated Nicola Stojanovic. Then this is, or politically assassinated Nicola Stojanovic. And so this is a Mars that enjoys giving a show of murder, okay? And so that was, it's not the whole story of Mars Leo. You can do many things with Mars Leo. It's a hot combination. You would need to learn how to remedy that. You would actually need to sway away to have good, healthy sexual drive that you can perform. You need to sway away from the brutality type of scenarios, and you would need to connect your heart chakra and root chakra more so than others. You need to have remediation for this aspect. It's a very hot temperature. But the way of integration lies more in connecting with the roots, Mars, and opening the heart. This is kind of like the go-to place. So you would need to see like how to work with that, but actually going to where the temptation to go to a show that can be violent can be great temptation, but you cannot forget that your son needs an open heart. And it's general for all people. But when that's not happening, or when there is a violence that is increasing, you know what I mean, kind of like the porn addiction, that's the pitfall with overly hot Mars aspect or overly hot Mars placements. And it's a fixed sign, so it's a bit more tricky. And so it's very likely that he was not trained in this way, and that he was trained to give certain shows that are military shows, or what we call terror shows of, and he has Sun Saturn. So Sun Saturn is a very restrictive place, very likely grew up with restriction. Usually we say it's a restrictive father. But in this case can be additionally restrictive religion. Aquarius is given for a totalitarian regime. So he grew under totalitarian regime that had manifested very likely in his father figure in the life, or parental figure in the life, but also could be initiator. You understand that these are secret societies. So the person who maybe was a handler, or was father figure, or was supposed to parent and caretake, was a very restrictive person, and the type of regime was not restrictive like the pyramidical, but more like a totalitarian and all-encompassing type of regime. If you think about kind of like the Muslim Brotherhood, that can be kind of like aspiration to have totalitarian world, but then they all are under the umbrella of secret societies, which is under the umbrella of kind of like what we see here, with whether through Agenda 2030, through Muslim Brotherhood, through I don't know, all kinds of things. And then you have the eclipse children within those that are playing a very particular role. And those people, when I talked about Donald Trump, I talked about those people that they try to control, but they can't really. So it's unpredictable. It doesn't mean that it's anti-cult, it's just a different type of person, a different type of life path. He has Mercury on 21 degrees Capricorn, okay? So this is, Mercury is in Capricorn, is kind of doing well. It's not here, not there. Those are pretty much the placements for him. So we talked about the sun, we talked about the moon, the restriction to the sun, which can restrict his shine even, or that he would shine as a very strict figure, which he was, okay? And I know that Palestinian people said that they remember him telling that all Palestinian people are his children. This is a very Sun Saturn, okay, taking the role of the father. But we have to remember, okay, there are various personalities, and we have this Ismail Haniyeh that would be, growing in a refugee camp, and we have this Ismail Haniyeh that would be flying bombardier, and all of these things are encompassed within, whether it's the mind files or the alters or the personalities that they program into these children. Okay, it's global intelligence. We understand that organizations like Hezbollah, like Hamas, like what we see, are all expandable children, but so are our Western leaders. Okay, and that is very, very, very important to understand when we try to look at things mundanely from a perspective of the expendable children that they didn't manage to kill. Okay, that is what I have to say about this. Now let's take a look at the transits, because Pluto going to Aquarius is far from the Sun and Saturn here. Okay, Pluto's already been on the Mercury a while ago, has time to the Sun, so Pluto is not playing a big part here. Uranus Taurus, well, the Uranus square to his Mars has been, like, it's past that. As for Neptune, and like his generation, he has Neptune in Scorpio. Neptune at the end of Pisces, again, this doesn't play too much of a huge role here. What does? We have the Chiron here that conjoins the Jupiter. Okay? No, it's not conjoining the Jupiter. Jupiter is earlier on. And so is Aries. We have had the eclipses, so definitely the eclipse. We have an upcoming 2 sets of eclipses. One with Rahu around his Jupiter. And it's a lunar eclipse in Pisces, but Rahu around his Jupiter. This is given, okay, where the shade of this eclipse is already given going somewhere. I don't know which house is Aries for him. And in this case, there was, okay, a show, and people talk about they use this WhatsApp to surveil. Guys, you want to download Signal, but it's not going to, like, it's SpaceX is literally the infrastructure for global surveillance. So it's just like, okay, you use it for your benefit, but I wouldn't change applications for that alone. And you want to be cautious of falling into the divisions, okay? Trump is an eclipse child. They can't control him. So whatever you rely on, it's like, I'm on Trump team. I'm like, Trump himself can change, okay? And so is the rest of the folks. So beware of the kind of like, red pill, blue pill, and so on, and all the types of divisions that they try to create, and essentially in and amongst the expendable children themselves. So I predicted that it is the upcoming eclipse that we're already in the shade of that did the job. That is, and it's given fated death, of course, naturally. And again, we have to remember that the eclipse that activated the axis of his north node, the solar eclipse in April, is still valid for it's valid 11 months from April. So that definitely was something that kind of got in the way of life. It's interesting to me. It's plausible that it's a Taurus ascendant, because that would give Venus 22 as the ascendant ruler. But what I have to admit I don't quite get is why now? Like, okay, there's nothing particularly Taurus. If that's the case, yes, it is assassination. When I look for political assassination, I'm looking for outer planets to inner planets. And so with the Rahu explanation, even that I don't see. Then there is another question. There's the question of cloning. And this is something I have to admit I'm not too familiar with. Okay? Whose chart is it? Cloning? Is he dead? Are questions that we usually don't ask ourselves. But in political assassination, it's appropriate to pop the question. I'm not saying that he isn't. I don't know. But it seems to me like unless there's something of the lots that is coming up that you would see in another way, this Venus in Sag is not so targeted. It really isn't. Right now, it's nothing too much perfecting for this 22 Venus if it's ruling the ascendant, and it is supposed to be political assassinate them in his home. So I'm supposed to see something. I kind of don't. I have to admit. Okay, and again, I don't know. I'm not used to like popping these questions out. Yes, it's not giving me anything particularly deadly right now. There's nothing too much in Sag. Senna in Gemini is far away. What's in Gemini now? We have the Jupiter and Mars. Yes, they're not even close to Venus. Like none of them is reaching the 22nd. Bless me. So I would expect something of the 22 to be triggered at the political assassination. I would even expect Uranus to be triggered. Okay, there is the Urano-Algol and Venus is ruling it. But you know, it's kind of, we haven't had so much activation for that. We had the Venus 22 in Leo, which I think was around the time when it happened, I'm not sure. And she would be trining that 22 Venus. So it's kind of like trining that 22 Venus, squaring the Urano-Algol that is ruled by that Venus. That is not impossible, okay? Because that would activate the Sun, Saturn, and then Saturn is also death. So, yeah, that's true. His Jupiter is actually, his Jupiter is actually in Pisces. He has Chiron in Pisces, and then Jupiter in Pisces. So Jupiter is not in Aries even. But it's in the middle phase of Pisces. It's not yet the upcoming lunar eclipse, and not yet the Rahu. Saturn has gone over that Jupiter like a while ago, so it's not even that Jupiter. And if it is indeed this Venus on the 22nd that we had a couple of days ago in Leo, around the time of the assassination, then Venus trine Venus. Yes, I know it was assassinated in his house by a missile, by explosion. This is appropriate for the Venu-Algol, okay? Venu-Algol, for the Uranus-Algol. But I particularly remember Uranus, I think, was not on the minima when he was assassinated. So it is given that it could be even fortunate in a way. It's like even a grace in the sense that perhaps he was immediately killed or didn't suffer. And people say he was killed with his entire family. But this also means he crossed over with his entire family. So that might be even something that was desired, so that the entire family did not go like to human trafficking or something like that, more so than it endured. So for those of you who are, that were followers or admirers of Ismail Haniyeh, perhaps this would be a bit of grace to know that this was explosion, but this is more immediate death than others. And yes, it was with the family, but it also means that he went up with his family. So they weren't separated at death, and they weren't like, you understand, it was not kidnapped or traded or something like that. And so this is giving grace. Al-Gol was not on minima, so it's giving something that even fortunate. I know it's difficult to see that, but you understand this was expandable child grown. So this was a person that has been through torture and stuff and has tortured and so on. And this was, I guess, taking him out of his life by the merit of this Venus trying Venus. Okay, Vinu Algol trying Vinu Algol. This is the only scenario that I see from my perspective, and it is giving political assassination, especially when we talk about Uranus, that also is associated with Aquarius, is associated with Saturn, associated with the Sun, and it's kind of giving a release from the reality of being expandable children. I haven't seen astrologers doing his chart, which I think is interesting because I'm half Israeli, half Dutch, and kind of like our Dutch leader congratulated this, and I can see where that's coming from, but also I see it as different. I see it's all false flag, and they're all the expandable children grown. And so, and then naturally, in Israel, people were not really grieving. Although you would be surprised, I saw a lot of people said that there should not be happy from death. So it's also in the Israeli frontier. People are not everybody is congratulating, okay, for this or happy, or a lot of people even said, hey, this is the person that could have brought the deal, that could have brought the kidnapped back. And I said a while ago that when you see the heads of what we call their organizations being off, it's because the desire is that they wouldn't bring peace, okay? Simply put. And you see Israel right now, bombing here, bombing there, bombing 3 countries more, like very weird everything that we understand is not Israel, which is important to understand before it gets to your town. I do want to give a moment to consider the non-physical aspect, okay, not just psychological, but also psychic aspects of war. So for those of you dealing with that, I invite you to watch Annika Luca's podcast, to watch the Imagination podcast, and the interviewers is both giving grace to the people who went out of expandable children, like Annika Lucas, and did not grow to be either leaders or terror leaders or intelligence people, because they managed to escape, or public figures, yes, and you can listen to their stories, which I think is fascinating. There are also tools to deprogram and to tackle, psychic attacks and all of these type of targeting that is a part of these wars, which I think is not talked about enough. So yes, back to Haniyeh, I do believe that this Uranus algol played a part in a way that would make his assassination somehow fortunate. So he was with the family, they all crossed over together, so no separation, no torture, no this, no that, okay, explosion within his house, in his dwelling. I think, yes, it was in his house in Tehran. And so, and when we talk about the perspective of crossing over, it is giving grace to the person and to the family. We would love to have grace of life rather than grace of death, but that is also important to remember. And Uranus is giving us the political assassination, okay? Because he was considered the leader of revolutionary movement, okay? Attempt to change the status quo of Palestine, supposedly from one state to another. It may be the case that he was genuinely, and with expandable children, you have to understand they have alters and personalities where they genuinely empathize, and they genuinely care, and they are programmed to have other personalities, and that is something you will hear from those who are designed to be child assassins. Okay, so I do commemorate this death from the point of a person who didn't manage to get out of the cold, a person who was used in these all false flag operations, and grew up with having a life in a refugee camp, which I don't wish for anybody. And that camp persisted to what he had to do outside, which was to kill many people, supposedly in a promise of some liberation or something like that. But I don't even think that was. I don't even think that was because of all the programming that they go through, and had the grace of living with his family. I think that the world is better off abolishing the practice of expandable children all across the board. And I think that this shouldn't take away from seeing people as people, but it's also the points of interference that I see is to listen to survivors, not just as an act of like, yeah, listen, I believe you, and so on. They have information. They have information how to get out of this. They have information of what it is. You can connect the dots, but you can see the world from a different perspective. And I think it is interesting that an Israeli astrologer covers this topic. I hope I did it grace. Yes, I don't fall into ideation, but not to devaluation either. And yes, it's very likely this Venus that ruled Algol, Uranus on the 22nd, the trine, his 22nd Venus, activated the ascendant, and the trine is harmonious aspect. Yes, it was explosion, but I know from other astrologers that look into that, sometimes you actually see benefic transits associated with death. I even got, as a person who tried to channel and got all kinds of information, I got the blessed death, or you would do anything possible to get here if you know how good it is here, which is of course not to encourage people to die, but understand that there is grace in death, and that people do cross over to a place where they can heal from this lived experience. I know that as a person who studied like NDEs and so on, that's more so a place where people go to where they are having the love buffer to heal. I'm not the person who holds like the memento mori. Actually, I saw a beautiful video by Mama versus Mafia channel that she just uploaded about the memento mori, which is a philosophy that since Socrates, that people are encouraged to look at, to remember the dead, to reflect on the dead, and even to fear death, or to try to come back here and to have everlasting life and so on. I think that, and especially, I'm not going to say names of people that have like living family, and sometimes I see their spirit through their living family, but I definitely can tell you that when we channel, usually it is celebrities, because this is what we see. Okay. But unless it's like your close relative, when you connect with your ancestors, when we channel like people, is usually people that were in these cults, and you would be surprised, exposing yourself to the voice, you would be surprised that that they're actually not suffering in death, or maybe the cult will try to preserve them or to have them oh god, to have them like frozen and so on, or like all kind of things, or to reincarnate and stuff like that. But I have to say to you, they're not suffering when they cross over, okay? So it doesn't mean they won't come back and so on. I do suspect some of my kittens. Okay, this is funny about afterlife. I have seen an omen that I will receive everything that I lost times 3 or something like that. And the kittens that died along the way since the war and so on, but not because of the war, it's just like because of the wild dogs, basically. Their mother came a couple of days ago, and then today she brought her kittens, and I looked at the faces of the 4 kittens. Each of them looks like a kitten that died. And I'm like, wow. Oh my God. So for those of you who are dealing with loss and grief and continuation, I'd like to offer this brighter, lighter story to death and rebirth, and to bring in the grace not to celebrate life. And I have to admit, I got more teachings on celebrating life from people that crossed over. But to understand that yes, it's we are grieving as people, and I guess maybe it's useful also to Palestinian people, because I know a lot of Palestinian people looked up to, perhaps with ideation, especially when you're in such distress, when you're like closed in ghettos or open air ghetto, or not, or missing something deeply missing, whether it's your motherland or family or so. And I don't claim that I understand the experience, but definitely people can tend to over idolize and want the kind of like the father figure, and for many perhaps this is who Haniyeh was. So I guess I could come with this non-Islamic approach to that, where you do see that people cross over and they get this love buffer, and this is, if I compare certain things that I received from that afterlife that began with like a sentence or something like that, then after some years was an experience, and in between was like blessed death, and I didn't know who said it and why, and essentially was blooming into an experience where it does feel so good up there. Even when there's the psychopomp effect, where yes, they are seen of what their life was and so on, and each person receives different stuff and at different times, but essentially is a place of joy of life, and it's important to enjoy living in our life here in the body, and to honor life while we are here in the body, not because of anything bad up there, but because we came here essentially to have human experience, and there's joy in this human experience that we shouldn't overlook and shouldn't forget to manifest. It's lived experience that comes, but it's important that we enjoy the living this well and to manifest and join the living. And I bless you with that, whoever you are. So a lot of good energy is coming, okay? But in this life, yes, for the expandable children, we know they did terrible things to their people because they lived through these death camps, like Shoah. That's ongoing. And we tend to stop this practice so that people can live good lived experience. That comes. And perhaps the point of interference is also kind of easing out of the memento